CEOs and business owners need to take a step back and look in the mirror and say, I know I've got something I can sell here. I don't know how to sell it. Let me go bring in someone who I can help to learn how to sell this thing or can teach me how to sell this thing. And it's a balancing act.
Oh yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. Today's show is sponsored by Ringmaster, on a mission to launch B2B podcasts that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth. Ringmasterlive.com. Bam. Awesome indeed. Awesome is right. All right, guys, this thing's going, cranking. Guess what? A guest is back from the past. We have been having a lot of fun, and honestly, half the podcast is over before I even hit record. So sorry about that. But no, the guest is great. We first chatted in 2018, episode number 36. I can't believe it. We're around 400 right now. If that tells you anything, we are catching up with this guest, and he's going to smash something for us. But who is he, Casey? Who is he? Not dilly down here. Well, he is a marketing and sales leader. How do you get both of those? I don't know. How can both of those be in one human body at the same time? I don't know, but we're going to talk to him. He's also an entrepreneur, a visionary, and he has this crazy track record of helping companies when they're trying to scale, they're trying to innovate, they're trying to grow. He does it. Decades of helping out in the SaaS world. We're going to pick his brain today. Founder and principal consultant at Starting Point Associates, JP Rinylo. Welcome, sir. Welcome back, I must say.
Thanks, Casey. The way you did the intro made me think back, like, when was it? So would you say 2018?
2018.
So we're 7 years, we're 6 or 7 years, somewhere around that. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago. You look the same. I can't imagine what I look like.
I have about 2 more hairs on my head.
Yeah. I have quite a few more on my face, I think. We were saying right before we started, I know I didn't have a beard. I have to go back and look what my hairline looked like. I'm still holding on to some of the hair. It's very gray though, very gray. And
yeah, but you got that elder statesman look.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah,
it's working for you.
So someone asked me the other day if I really enjoyed rock. I was at the gym. If I really enjoyed rock, and I'm like, yeah. What do you mean? They're like, 70s, rock, and I'm like, I mean, yeah, it's good music. Well, weren't you born in the 70s? I was like, no, I wasn't born in the 70s.
Oh man,
born in 81. Man, relax there.
That's like asking a round lady if she's pregnant.
Yeah.
Just don't do it.
There are things you just don't do.
Well, let me pass you this thing, man. It's heavy, but obviously you work out. Okay.
Look at that thing.
Go ahead and grab that. Grab Thor's hammer. You actually have to grab it. Okay. Yeah. There you go. Backhanded grab, ladies and gentlemen. One-handed grab of Thor's hammer. Impressive. Very impressive. You've been working out in the last 7 years. JP, take that hammer, the official Thor's hammer, and smash for me some kind of marketing and sales myth, bogus strategy, misconception. Set the record straight once and for all.
This one it might be more personal to me. It's something I've seen a lot of. It's something I've experienced a lot. It's, when you're a growing company, this is one of the things that Starting Point's about. But when you're a growing company, you're first, into your, low level millions, like 0 to 5 million, your first sales hire after the CEO and or the founding team has been doing their growth, your first sales hire should not be some super senior VP of sales from, 10 years of industry success in the space that you want to operate and grow in. I mean, it can be, but you have to set expectations clearly with that person. What you really should be focusing on is hire a junior sales rep. If you can help a kid, a young sales rep, get their legs under them with what you've been selling and building your business around, that's going to help you be much more successful in understanding when you would need a more senior salesperson. It's like hiring that first sales leader to then come in when their expectation would be to help you build the sales organization. You really want them to come in and sell for you. You can't just buy, but like in many cases, what I'm seeing is, like, I guess this is the myth. Don't just make your first sales hire like the purchase of someone's book or the purchase of someone's Rolodex. If anything, it's insulting to that person because it suggests that you don't want them so much as you want what they bring to the table. And I get it. We're talking about sales here. But in reality, that person is way more than just their relationships and their network. That person needs to be able to come in and help you make sense of, like, how you, CEO or founder or, senior leader in the company, got the business to the place where it is today, and you want it to go to the next level. Well, trust me when I tell you, in my experience and what I've seen, hiring junior reps is going to be starting there is going to be a lot easier for you because you can shape them and mold them and give them direction and learn from them what they need to be successful. Way easier than you can trying to match expectations between yourself and a super senior executive. And I'm not talking about myself in this case, but I'm saying like people who have been in business for 10, 15, 20 years, and you want to hire them in, you better give them a part of that company then. Actually, if you're going to do it, like you better give them a part of that company. You better give them a piece of the pie because you're asking them to come in and help raise your kid, essentially. So that's one of the things I've seen. I've seen it happen in 3 or 4 of the clients I worked with before I started here. When I was working with another consulting firm, I saw back when I was watching some of my peers get hired. When I was working for a SaaS company, I saw some of my peers get hired out of that company and go and work for small startups. And they'd be like, "Oh, cool! Like, how big's your team?" They're like, "Oh no, it's just me." I'm like, "Oh, dude, you just got hired as a sales rep." They're like, "No, no, no, no. I'm going to build a sales team." I'm like, "All right, cool. They're gonna want revenue from you immediately, day one."
Because you're expensive, right?
Yeah, you're expensive. You're don't hire the expensive hire first if you're going to try and grow a sales team, unless your plan is to have them be partner or share equity or something to that effect. Because without that component, then you're really just trying to buy their book, and that's I'll just say it's unfair. It leads to it. I've not seen it one time lead to success for companies that I've been a part of, or even companies that I've seen my peers and my friends be parts of. So
Yeah. Where does this come from? I'm trying to think of the origin of it. Are people just trying to? They don't know sales, right? And they're just like maybe
I'll tell you what, that's a really good point. Where I've seen it happen most, where this myth comes from is, especially since starting point. I've had a few people come my way that I've turned down as clients because they were referred to me or introduced to me as someone that could really help them get their sales organization off the
yeah.
ground. And when I'm in the conversations with them, I'm finding the first things I'm asking are, well, listen, like, how do you sell today? Oh, well, we don't really sell. It's all through referral and network growth. Okay, great. Then that means you don't have a go-to-market message. You don't have go-to-market content. You don't have a go-to-market strategy. Your process is essentially you pick up the phone when someone who's been referred to you is interested in working with you, and you air quotes close them. And that's almost like an insult sometimes to those people and to the 2 or 3 individuals who I've spoken to recently that were like that. It's because, to your point, what I'm finding out in the discovery is most of them have not ever held any sort of a business development or sales role. And here's the funny part again, like they take offense to that sometimes when you say that. Okay, so listen, so you got it. Like, have you ever been in a sales role? Have you ever sold? No, well, I mean, like, not as a sales rep, but I mean, I'm selling every day, right? But you're selling as the CEO. Like, let's be serious. You're selling as the CEO, and the business development is really just you are seen as a leader and a thought leader because you started a company after 15 or 20 years of experience or 30 years of experience in your craft. Your sales are not really selling motions. They are, and I think back to like watching like someone like David Lewis, who I truly admire. And I just spoke with him recently. But David Lewis started Demand Gen.
Yeah, David Lewis. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, in a recent story, him and I were chatting, and he told me, he had his first client lined up before he even opened the doors for Demand Gen. And it was because someone found out that Dave was going to be doing something different. He's going to be starting this thing. They asked him what it was. He's like, "Oh, it's I'm going to be doing Eloqua installations and Eloqua implementation and building out demand gen frameworks and
Yeah.
lead nurtures." And they were like, "Oh, we need that. You're hired."
Right.
Dave didn't sell
Based on the reputation.
based on reputation.
Yeah.
Reputation sells when you're first getting started. I've had plenty of phone calls and plenty of referrals since getting starting point off the ground. I am being myself very judicious in how I engage with clients because it's honestly because I want to set the expectations correctly with them. The 2 people who I've said no to so far, both of them were like, well, we hear you're a really good sales executive. We'd love to have you come in and grow our sales organization. Okay, great. Why? What is it you want me to do? What is it you want me to accomplish? So, case to your point, where does it come from? I think it comes from this like false understanding or false misconception that to grow a sales team and to be successful in sales, you just got to hire a really good salesperson. And that person's got to be a senior executive who's got X number of years of experience and a network on LinkedIn of a certain number of connections.
Yeah. So it's not, I think I've fallen into this trap too, where you think the most expensive, like it's like paying a lot for jeans or something. I mean, it's since the dawn of time, you pay a lot for something, you think that it's probably the right thing. I remember the most
Yeah.
expensive person I ever hired was the worst fit ever.
And that's also often what I've seen and experienced myself. Your most expensive hire, who you have the highest expectations from, ends up being the worst fit, or you're trying to force fit them because the organization, in your mind has to have this exponential growth or has to hit this exponential milestone, or you just want to hit a certain revenue target by the end of the year. And you hire this person and they come in, and if you have a sales team already, their sales team is great people, but they've never been led before in the way that you expect this person to lead them. And that person comes in with this expectation that they're going to come in and that they have full reign to shape shift the organization in the ways that they know that it's necessary. And you start to, meaning that the founders and the heavy hitters in the business start to expect all this growth certain, at a certain point when the person comes in the door. And again, to your point, like a bad fit, your most expensive hire could be a bad fit. If you haven't given the culture an opportunity to adjust to that person, to understand that person, if you haven't set that person up for success, that's another thing. Like that person might not be a fit coming in the door, but can you help shape shift the organization around them? That's on the leaders of the business who hired that person, right? Now, granted, if you have somebody come in who's like a blowhard and just, says everything's a mess and you're an asshole for this and you did everything wrong, like, sure, but most people in this day and age are not going to do that, at least not people like myself or others who want to come in and actually genuinely help. But yeah, I think, it's not that maybe it's not like a myth to bust in this sense, but like, I think that CEOs and CEOs and business owners need to take a step back and look in the mirror and say, in case I'm sure you've had to do this, and say like, okay, I know I've got something I can sell here. I don't know how to sell it. Let me go bring in someone who I can help to learn how to sell this thing or can teach me how to sell this thing. And it's a balancing act, right? So if you want to hire a heavy hitter out of the gate, that's going to be that person who, has 10, 15 years of experience, then you got to say to them, look, I'm hiring you because I don't know how to scale this thing myself, and be real about that and kind of check their ego. And then to your point, they're going to be an expensive hire and you're going to want to make sure that person is a good fit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Which is one of the reasons, again, going to starting point. Like I got starting point, as a starting point for myself, because I started noticing like every organization I've ever worked for, every organization I've ever talked to as a potential client, now has a different starting point. Not every company is starting from the same place. And so there's not like a single formula or a single algorithm or a single set of steps that you have to follow. Sure, there's templates you can model after. There's success models you can follow. There's benchmark studies you can go and review and say, okay, well, as a SaaS company, companies that are 0 to 2 million in their first 3 years tend to go to 10 million and 12 million in years 3, 5, and 7. Sure. But what are all the individual, elements of that success plan, and how do they go about their hires, and how did the sales organization, or when did the sales organization scale, at what number? All those things are going to be different based on the type of company, the type of product, the people involved. What the starting point is really a pivotal component of every company's growth, at least for companies I'm working with, every company's growth.
Dude, love the name, starting point, right?
Thanks.
Because oftentimes even on this pod, I'm like, hey, what's the starting point? Where are we at? But of the things you've highlighted here, I see like there's like two challenges. One is like, okay, you don't need that super crazy expensive guy, just hire that junior person. But like as a founder, you're thinking, oh yeah, founder-led sales, no problem. Like I'd say I'm kind of just before that point. It's founder-led sales, and I go, what am I doing? So I'm going to figure it out this year, but eventually it's time to bring in a junior hire. But then the second thing I'm realizing from your pointing out is, hey, your sales are not your sales, is what you said. Your sales, and you need to further develop your process. Because if I think about it now, like I've got like a program guide, but I don't have like a pitch deck. And I was chatting this morning with someone who he didn't even pitch me, but he shared some of the slides from it. And I was like, dude, I love your pitch deck. These are some great, like, I visually see what you're talking about. I'm like, I love this. And I'm like, dang it, I don't have one. But these are the kind of things that, to your point, maybe the founder can sell it because, like, look, this is what I did, and here I'm super experienced and all these things.
Yes.
But at some point, when you transfer responsibility or you bring in a junior person, they can't sell the way you've been selling. They got to actually show the value.
Spot on, Case. I'm glad you and I are having the conversation point in a way that resonated with you for like what I'm highlighting. Honestly, the other alternative to that, and this goes back to like why like I'm busting that myth that you have to hire a super senior salesperson as your first sales hire to grow your sales organization, in the sense that like that seems to be the expectation out of the gate. Like, oh, I'm just going to hire. Like, I'll never forget a company saying like, well, I was just told to hire JP, and all my problems will be solved. Now, that's not me patting myself on the back. That's me highlighting a point that they were trying to suggest, which is when I then asked them, well, listen, if you hired me, what's the first thing you're going to tell me about that I need to know about how to go sell to your clients? Oh,
Wow.
I'm going to look to you to figure that out. Well, then that means I got to go do some research. How many clients do you have? Oh, we've got about 10 clients. Okay, great. How much revenue do you have? Well, we've had 20 million lifetime value. Great. 20 million over how many years? 10. Okay, you're averaging 2 million a year. Is this a lifestyle business? Is this a business you're like, and that, like, these are the conversations that I'm now having with folks, but these are the conversations people who are growing these companies need to be having with themselves. Like you're just like I'm hearing you just do for yourself. It's like, Case, I'm not telling you have to have a pitch deck, but I know Casey has a story. And, I recently attended a Tony Robbins event. And one of the things I thought was great was he was talking about, now Tony Robbins is like, I'll call it generic in the sense that people who attend those events tend to be from all walks of life. Some of them are going through personal struggles. Some of them are going through professional struggles. Some of them are going through both. Some of them are trying to, work their way out of a divorce. Some of them are trying to work their way out of a, career that they, didn't want to be in the first place, and they want to reinvent themselves. But this aspect of, starting with a strategy, it's actually the opposite, according to Tony's model. He says, no, you need to start with your current state. So for him, it's current state, story, strategy. So, Case, a little bit of wisdom from Tony Robbins for you just to think about. What is your current state? What is your current story? And do you have a strategy that supports it? And if the answer is no on that last part, then you have to go back to, this is what he says, you have to go back to state. What is your current state? And what do you want that current state? How do you want that current state to change? So
You say state, story, strategy?
state, story, strategy. Yeah. And the whole premise is, without getting into like the Tony Robbins aspect of it too deeply, but if you want to change your current state, you have to understand where you are, and then say, okay, and this is where I am, and this is where I want to be. Now it's okay. Well, does your current story support your current state, or does it support your future state? And then you have to change the story, and then to change that story, what do you need to do? You need to come up with strategy, or to make that story that change from current story to new story or future state, etc. So,
JP, what's your state right now?
entrepreneurial. My state is entrepreneurial. My wife and I were talking about this the other day. My current state is transition. I'm in a state of transition. For 15 years, almost 15 years, I've been in a seller role, direct seller role. Whatever that looked like, whether it would be, early stage sales rep to senior sales rep to senior sales rep account management, professional to senior sales rep account management professional, marketing consultant, eventually trusted advisor, sales professional, like, but all of the, sales leader, sales manager, sales hirer, sales firer, like all those things. This is the first time you and I were talking about this before the podcast started, but all those things gave me a tertiary view because of my own interests, a tertiary view into what it takes to grow a business, build a business. And very fortunately, I'm very grateful for this. The companies I've worked for, I've typically been one of the firsts in. I was the first hire, even before I got truly into this space, meaning B2B marketing and sales. One of the first companies I worked for was a health insurance company. And I was one of the first hires to what was called a sales implementation team. And that was my real first taste of working in a sales support role. And being the first in there, we had to figure things out. We had to be very cross-functional in nature and understand, like, how does sales need support from marketing, need support from operations, need support from customer success, need support from accounting, need support from legal. And then that led to when I joined, as I mentioned earlier, David Lewis. I worked with David Lewis and Demand Gen team for almost 3 years. And when I joined there, I was one of the first sales hires. And I was not an overnight success, but I was able to really figure it out. I was so grateful for that experience. But going back to that point of like my current state, all of that built me up as a sales professional. And because I had the opportunity to see all those cross-functional areas, that tertiary view I had was, how does a business like this grow and scale? What I didn't have at that time was, and this is where I come back to my current state, what I didn't have at that time was I didn't have responsibility over any of those other areas that I was being cross-functional in. And now my entrepreneurial state, as I mentioned, I'm like, sometimes I'm accounting, sometimes I'm marketing, sometimes I'm research and development, sometimes I'm consulting, sometimes I'm, dad, sometimes I'm, puppy dad, sometimes I'm husband. You're wearing a million hats when you're in this stage of transitioning into owning your own business and building your own practice. So
Yeah, I love that.
I hope that answers the question.
It does, man. It does.
I'm going to say a gratitude as well. My wife, this is, I don't know if you can see this, but this is my starting point. My starting point associates coffee mug. And I actually I just realized that I'm drinking out of it actually, because this was not an intended prop. Normally I'm drinking out of a much larger mug, but it's in the dishwasher. My wife though got this for me on Christmas morning. It was my only gift that she and I don't do much for gifts for each other. This is my only gift that was something I was like, wow, that was such a thoughtful gift. And I only launched the business back in I registered it or submitted it for registration the week of Thanksgiving. And then like December, first week of December, I think I was telling you this before, we launched.
Yeah.
So somewhere between that date, the date we launched, and Christmas Day, my wife snagged the logo off of some place that I must have had it on my computer that she could access.
Didn't even tell you, huh?
Didn't even tell me. And
that's A+ gifting right there. She snagged that logo from somewhere.
Yeah, my wife is a very thoughtful person, man. She's good like that. So
it's interesting. Sometimes the best gifts, like I used to just be super careless with gifts until, I had my wife called me, Natasha, hey man, like you going to get stuff last minute on Christmas Eve at Macy's. I mean, thank you for the random shit, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a bunch of stuff if it's like something that really matters. And I'm glad she kind of called that out, because ever since then I'm like, oh yeah. So like, yeah, but you can't think of gifts last minute.
Make it matter, man.
Yeah, dude.
Don't make it count. Make it matter.
I have this little notepad. No, it's like a list in my phone. Anytime someone sort of mentions something, oh, that would be neat or whatever, boop, 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 goes in the phone, right? And then when it's birthday time or Christmas time, I have a whole horde of things. And I love giving gifts like that. I respect that mug. And, for me, it was actually, Tina got me a SpaceX t-shirt, right? You keep talking about how cool the rockets are. And eventually she surprises you on Christmas with a t-shirt that says SpaceX.
That's cool.
Let's go. And I almost cried about that. Like, it was not the most expensive gift. It was not the most, right. I kind of felt that, it was a dust. It got a little dust.
That was my mug that morning. I had no idea that this mug was coming, like, and that's awesome. But Casey, I'm glad your wife Tina, made that suggestion to you to kind of look at gifting that way,
because it can be a love language, for some people.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I'm a big love language believer. My wife and I were talking about this probably a couple months back, and it was in the summertime, and I had just taken the love language test for something for work at my last gig, and I had my wife take the quiz, and I tried to guess hers. I was way off, man. My wife's
how many years have you been married?
17 this June.
Okay, and you were off. We're both off.
Well, no, she knew mine without question. Yeah, I had her top two reversed.
Oh no.
Yeah. So acts of service. Acts of service is my wife's number one.
Acts of service. We can get our wives together and they can teach us about that. But like, yeah, like how? But at least when because I think some of the challenge for me was, I kind of understood what would send her the signals, and they weren't my default. But also, she'd been sending me those signals back in her style, and I hadn't been receiving them. So then that opened my eyes up to, oh, she's actually loving me right now. Yeah. It's really cool. So you kind of like, I'll receive that. I'll receive that. That's cool.
Yeah. And recognizing it. Yeah. Like that's like to your point, recognizing it. Like when my wife,
you recognize it.
I've said this to my wife a number of times. Like when she's doing things at times, I'm like, you go above and beyond for for others and myself, like without question. Why? And now that I know what her love language is because in her mind, that's her expressing love and care and genuinely giving a shit about people in her life, which is awesome because on the other side of that, when she doesn't do things for people, that's how you know that she doesn't really care about them.
Yeah, that's
So,
it.
yeah.
Dude, I'm glad a couple of sales and marketing mongrels like us can marry some pretty decent people here.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for my wife. It sounds like you are as well. I'm grateful that you have the opportunity to have an awesome wife as well. Yeah, my wife is my superhero. I mean, you and I could talk about that a whole other day, but she's a superhero in this house.
That's it, man. Yeah, I want to circle back around because I want to address your transition, but I want to start first with, I love to isolate some starting points. Starting points for me where I'm at as like a practical conversation, and starting points for you where you're at, and talk through that. But
Yeah, let's work on your pitch deck.
I know, man. So I'm in founder led. I don't even know if that's the starting point, right? So I think this is kind of a cool conversation because
Sure.
one, your company name can be used in conversation a million times. It kind of brands it in people's heads. But the
Yeah.
idea is like, where do you start? I think sometimes people start in the wrong place, right? So I'm like a couple of years into founder-led growth, founder-led sales. Um, I'm hoping for 2026. That's when that junior person comes in. Like, what do I need? And what do the folks listening need? And if they're the marketer helping out their CEO, what do you need when the CEO is still the salesperson? What do you need to transition to eventually having that junior person and having them work well?
Well, again, sticking to the reference to the name starting point, it will really depend on a number of things. Number one, like to your point, where are you in your growth stage? Like, so I'd be asking you things like out of the gate, and just as a point of reference, not to say this is a sales aspect of the part of the conversation, but what I found is doing an assessment early, like out of the gate, is definitely necessary with every client who I've engaged with, and the necessary evil in that is partly we need to see if we can work together. Like that's what I'm looking at when I'm doing it for my clients. But also, like to your point, it's so that I can kind of come in and shadow you. Like, because Case, here's the thing: you might know where you think you are, but like you said, you might think you're ready to hire a salesperson, and I might go and talk to your team, and it could be a 30-minute conversation with all the folks from your team. I don't know how many people you have. Let's say you have 10 people. I could probably get on a call and say, hey guys, listen, I've been talking with Casey. He's asked me to speak with you guys and get a sense for like if you guys were to scale the business and he were to hire a salesperson, what is your, and one of the questions might be, what is your confidence level that that salesperson would be able to confidently tell the story of the hardcore marketing show or of what Ringmaster's claim to fame is?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like a simple little reference to like if they because if your team can tell the story, then that junior salesperson would be
Mhm.
able to tell the story without needing the Casey version.
Right.
And that's really where and that's I'll reference back to Dave Lewis. Like Dave and I talked recently, and Dave said he had to take a hard look in the mirror and figure out like, okay, like how do I go from it being the David Lewis show to being the demand gen show? And I think, Case, that's what you would have to do for yourself. Like, is Ringmaster Casey Cheshire, or is Ringmaster the number one B2B podcast broadcasting, services team in the business for B2B marketing organizations? By the way, I don't know if that's your pitch, but again, like since you don't have a pitch deck and I don't know necessarily what your slogans are, that's where you would have to start. So it's a little bit of an exercise like sounds like you've done in the past where it's like, where am I today and where do I want to go and how do I want to get there? So with like when I'm having a conversation, I can think back to the conversation I had with one of my clients or my prospective clients who I said no to. When I asked her why she wanted to hire me, her response is, well, because everybody knows JP. Okay. And then my next question was, so on day one, what are you going to tell me is the secret sauce to selling what you guys do?
Yeah.
And she couldn't answer the question.
Right.
And so, like, I think to your point, just speaking, confidently about what I understand of what you guys are about, I think you're already at that place. So your starting point is going to be different. Well, JP, like we're the best in business, and this is why. And we have this many clients and this many episodes, and we've produced this many episodes for ourselves and this many episodes for our clients. And so there's already a story there, Case. What you might not have is someone who's able to take that story and articulate it in a way that they can confidently sell it as like me walking into the room. Hey, listen, so I just started working with this company. We're called Ringmaster. I've only been there for 30 days, but in the first 30 days, what I've learned is we've crushed it for named clients And what we've been able to accomplish for them is reference certain statistics points. And what we've seen them say about our work with them is reference a couple of quotes. It's that simple. But if you have it only in your head, then the first thing you need to be thinking about is, okay, how am I going to enable a junior rep? And where I think this is a fun exercise because it goes back to my myth bust. Because if at that point you're like, I don't feel like doing that's a lot of work for myself to have to figure out and then tell a junior person, forget it. I'm just going to hire a senior sales rep or a senior sales executive, let them figure it out. Well, guess what? That senior sales rep, when they walk in the door, a senior sales executive, when they walk in the door, they're going to ask you those questions.
Right.
All right, Case. So do I have carte blanche? Like, you want me to just come up with anything I want for how we sell Ringmaster? Or do you have a specific set of things that you think are very,
Right.
genuinely specific to the success that you've seen so far?
And that could waste a lot of time, right? Just sort of delegate and run away, abdicate. That's going to waste a lot of time unless you want that ramp to be a long one for that
Yeah,
rep.
it's exactly. And a fun point about that is this, because I experienced this. It's like, you just said run away. Like, so what I've seen is CEOs will hire that person, the senior sales executive or the senior sales hire, because they didn't want to figure that stuff out because it's too hard or it's too scary or they don't have the confidence or they're insecure about it. So they hire that senior sales executive or a senior, salesperson. That person comes in and they've kind of just left them to their own devices to figure it out, right? Well, I'm going to hire a senior salesperson and they'll figure it out. I'm going to put the onus on them to figure it out. Well, if you're giving them that sort of carte blanche, that long runway, at the same time, from day one, all they're hearing is that, like Scrooge McDuck, they're hearing that gold coin hit the ground every time they pay that person, and they're just looking for the return. Their expectations are that person's going to figure it out right away and get started and be a success and grow revenue and drive pipeline. Guess what? I've seen actually the opposite. I've seen it actually occur where they did that. The CEO disappeared a bit or didn't address the concerns, the questions, or the points that the senior salesperson or salesperson in general was left to figure out on their own. The senior salesperson was a success at driving pipeline and generating revenue, and then it turns out that the revenue and the success is not the type of client or service or promise that the company wants the salesperson making to the end users and the clients. And now you got a bunch of churn that's coming and a bunch of headache in the meantime.
Yeah, that churn's coming around the corner. It's like a train, freight train headed your way, and because they winged it and they promised all sorts of things. They promised monkeys swinging from chandeliers, and then you're like, wait, what? What did you promise them? We've never done that before.
Yeah. Wait, you told them that we can do what in what time frame, and for how much? Figure it out.
I've definitely lost clients that way. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It was one of the things that I learned early on in sales when I was working at the health insurance company. Actually, one of the sales reps I was helping to support for it was for Comcast. It was one of and major company, major contract, and they promised them that they could do something via a portal that was still being built, that my team that I had worked for prior to becoming the sales support team, that we were building. And they promised some feature that just didn't even exist. Like, we weren't even in testing mode for it yet. And they promised them that feature, and then the client signed, and then the contract went live, and everyone went on that portal to get to that thing that wasn't available, and it blew up in that person's face. I remember that day. I remember that person's name. I'm not going to say it, but well. So yeah, like it's important to really take that look in the mirror and say, okay, am I ready to not divert. Yeah, well, to divert that function of the business to someone else, and then also to support that person in a way that is going to be either A, very enabling for them so that they can figure it out on their own, or B, very enabling for them in a way that I'm going to help figure it out with them. Like, they're going to help me figure it out.
Yeah.
I don't know if that gives you, but I mean, Casey, you could also just start with like, try to write a pitch deck. Try to come up with 3 slides.
3 slides. Okay. What do I need?
Well, I mean, it would be, who is Ringmaster? What do you do? And why should people care? Like, those 3 things would be simple.
Yeah. So don't try to get all fancy, because I definitely had a combo with someone
You don't need visuals.
where they were like, hey, describe the horror and pain they're in and the raging storm they're in, and then describe the safety of the harbor that they come to.
So
You know?
so that I like that, but that suggests that like, and I'm just going to use your own example of a business is like there's no pain point that most companies are probably experiencing by not having a B2B podcast, right? Like,
Well, I guess, but the idea is the bigger picture of, like, let's say your marketing's disconnected, and you have no idea who your customers are or what their pain is, and you feel, and all of your marketing is just, you're spending all this money and nothing's happening, and it's being more and more inefficient, and things are going downhill. It's because you're
yeah.
disconnected. You're not talking to your customers. You don't know who they are, and it'd be like a bigger thing. But you're right. Like,
So hold on, you have a really good starting point to your story there, and that wasn't intentional name dropping there, but
yeah, no, that's cool.
like that's a really good starting point, right? Like
Yeah.
you can go in, but again, that's not pain maybe, so much as opportunity to recognize growth, right? Or Dave Lewis and I, man, I mentioned him a number of times. I should be getting paid for referrals.
I know, seriously.
Dave and I, in a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, were talking, and he said he was giving me some coaching and some advice on like how I build my own practice and how I kind of shape my own messaging. And he said, look, at the end of the day, like when we were building demand gen out of day one, he's like, we were identifying, are we going to be a painkiller or are we going to be a stimulant? And sometimes painkillers and stimulants are sold at the same time. Like maybe the solve to the pain is stimulant, or sometimes, to your point, like B2B podcast could be a stimulant to something that's not necessarily a pain, but it's an area of neglect, right? Someone who needs to increase their aerobic capacity from a fitness perspective, someone who needs to increase their aerobic capacity might not know that their aerobic capacity needs improvement until they try to walk, until they move from, a very flat neighborhood to a very hilly neighborhood. And suddenly they're having a hard time walking up and down their driveway, or walking up and down all the steps in and out of buildings, or walking up and down the sidewalks when they walk their dog. They didn't realize that there was an aerobic capacity issue that they had until suddenly they were like, oh, I missed out on the opportunity to take care of this by not working out, by not doing things that help me to stay in better shape.
But I think that I think you always just kind of want to be a pain pill, right? You want to solve something that hurts, because like if you want to solve, like if you're Tylenol and you got a headache, like I'm going to that Shell station and I'm going to pay $5 for 4 capsules, right? It doesn't really matter
In that moment, yeah.
I'm gonna grab, or all they have is a bottle of them for $6. So I guess I'm buying the bottle because I need to get 2, as opposed to, do I really need that, whatever. Now, if it comes to Celsius, this show is sponsored by Celsius, then I'm definitely gonna grab 2 for $5. But you know what I'm saying? Like, the tendency always want to be a pain pill.
You got a Celsius and a coffee there? Jeez. You got a lot of caffeine. You got a lot of caffeine on that desk there.
Bro, I got coffee. I got Celsius over here. The only thing I don't have is, a line of white caffeine powder on the table,
Yeah. It's funny. You just said the gas station Tylenol example. So let's play that out. Actually, this is a good opportunity to kind of to tease the idea of where you are and where each person is at their starting point. So if you're a very healthy person, you had a really good day in general, you're, happy-go-lucky, headaches are very rare for you, and you're driving down the interstate and you get stuck in a bunch of traffic, and you don't have any water in your car, and the only thing that's coming up nearby is a rest stop, and you've recently gotten you start to get a headache because you've been sitting in this traffic, and you're a lot longer on the drive than you expected to be, but generally you don't really get headaches. Then in that moment, that immediate solve for pain could be to stop at the gas station and pick up some Tylenol. Now let's play that a different way. If you're a relatively high-strung person, high stress, you're always running, go, 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 all you drink is coffee, Celsius, Red Bull. You never, water doesn't even ever touch your lips. You're a carbohydrate before a protein kind of person. You're a Snickers bar before a protein bar kind of person. You run to the minute every day. You're working 10, 12 hours a day. You're always on. Your stress levels are high. Your health is in the shit. And you're getting a headache every single day.
Yeah.
That's not like you don't need a painkiller. You need you need a transition. Like so those two people are in two very different places, is my
Yeah,
point.
that's a great point.
And so that's the reference to the starting point could be different. So for the person who's like, yeah, I just got this random headache. Well, that doesn't sound like a pain that they need me to help them solve. Their pain or their opportunity for something to be successful and could be something completely different because their starting point's a much shorter, runway to understand. Someone who's the opposite of that, like I described, their starting point could be, well, listen, before we even try to tackle why you're getting headaches all the time, let's look at some of the origin of what it is that's occurring in your life that could be driving all sorts of issues. Your stress levels, your dehydration levels, your nutrition levels, your sleep levels, all that kind of stuff gets played into it. And that's kind of one of the things I'm looking at when I go into engagements with my clients. It's like, so why would you want to hire me? Is like one of the questions I've asked, like I've said, and why would you want to hire me? Well, because I want to grow my company. Okay, great. How are you growing your company today? Well, we had like 3 or 4 clients when we first started, and we just keep renewing those clients. So what's it like to look like to go get a new client? I'm not really sure. That's why we're talking to you. Okay, then we gotta do some discussion. We gotta go have some research and discovery discussions with those existing clients. What's the value they see of working with you? Is it a pain you're solving? Is it an opportunity you're providing?
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, brilliant. If people are trying to find their starting point, where do you want them to go? How do they connect with you?
LinkedIn right now is probably my main area for connecting with folks. I do have a website which is startingpointassociates.com, or via LinkedIn, which is LinkedIn/startingpointassociates. You can also just reach out to me directly, JP Rinylo on LinkedIn. I think I'm JP Rinylo. It could be John Paul Rinylo, but if you put in Rinylo and you find more than just one or two, I'm going to be surprised.
Yeah, and look for that salty statesman photo.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we'll link to it from the show notes so people can just click right through to it.
Yeah, man, that'd be awesome. I got to get that. Did you see there's a lot of those AI LinkedIn photo headshot tools that are out there now? Like they're
Yes,
popping up
seen
everywhere.
I've seen this.
Yeah, I don't know if I trust them, but
I think you got to go the opposite direction. You got to have the most wrinkled face ever so that people know you're real, and
Yeah.
authentic.
Yeah.
Hey, dude, thank you so much for coming on here. This has been a blast, dude. I could catch up with you all day, every day. We got to get like a regular show going here because this is fun. There's a lot to talk about. I'm excited for Starting Point.
Thank you.
I'm excited to figure out my starting point. This is really good stuff.
We should talk.
Thank you, man. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Man. Well,
Thank you, buddy.
those listening, if you learned something or maybe just had a great time hanging out with us for an hour, either way, I'm sure you did both. Then share this with someone else who needs to think about their starting point, especially if they're in founder-led growth mode and they're kind of swimming in circles or they're treading water. Let's get them connected to JP so they can get out of that little rut they might be in. But with that, man, JP, thanks again, dude.
Thank you, Case. Really appreciate it, man. It's a lot of fun.
All right. This has been another crazy cool, exciting episode of the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will see you all next time.